I'm Dr. Margaret Buckham from Aussie Bangla Smile and the Days for Girls project. I'd like to show you how to make the most complicated part of the Days for Girls kit, the shield. The shield is the thing that goes around the underwear with snaps or stud buttons and holds the liner in the pockets. We're not going to make the liner today, we're just going to make the shield. The shield has the pockets, as I mentioned, and is made of 3 layers, 2 layers of fabric and an inside layer of waterproof fabric. So the first step in making the shield is to go to the Days for Girls website and download the instruction sheet and a pattern template. On the website, if you go to volunteer, you will find an option for make kits. Click on that and scroll down to patterns and instructions. And what we're making today is the shield, so you'll need the shield pattern. And it's important that you actually download and save this to your computer because it prints better from your computer than from the internet. So go ahead and download it. And if you go back to where we were, it's also worth downloading the shield instructions, as it has the measurements which are important for making the shield correctly. So go ahead and download those as well so you can refer back to them later. Having downloaded both of those items, the shield pattern. So this is the pattern. In order to fit on a piece of A4, it's only half the pattern, so you have to print it twice. So you go ahead and print. It's important when you go to print your shield pattern that you click this actual size option here, because if you don't, it will turn out the wrong size. So we go ahead and print. So having printed, what you'll get is 2 halves of the shield, which we'll put together to make a completed template. But before we go any further, you have to make sure that your printer has printed this template accurately, because every step from now on has to be very accurate or the item will not end up the proper finished size. On the printed template, you'll notice that they've listed pattern dimensions, 10 inches long and 8¼ inch wide. So just go ahead and measure your template. Mine's exactly 10 inches, and put together it should be 8¼ inch wide, and it is. So now I know that my parts are correct, I can go ahead and carefully cut out my paper pattern. Glue or tape the 2 bits together and carefully cut around the outside. Now it's important that you're probably going to make more than one shield, so it's important that these shields stay the same size over time. So I would advise you to either laminate this item once you've cut it, as we've done here, or to trace it onto some template plastic or thick cardboard so that you have a template that will last you for a long time. So first we have to talk about what sort of fabric. The fabrics need to be 100% cotton, and any sort of bright or brightly patterned or darkly patterned fabric is good for hiding stains. Pastels, whites and creams should be avoided. The other sort of fabric that goes into the shield is a special waterproof fabric called PUL, or polyurethane leather. It's thin and flexible and yet also waterproof. It's much more thin and flexible than any other sort of waterproof fabric, like say oilcloth or plastic sheeting, and so this is the only fabric that Days for Girls recommend you use as lining fabric. So the first step in making the shield is to first make this pocket piece. The pocket piece is made from a rectangle which is 5½ inches by 4 inches. You can do this various ways, but making a rectangular template saves some time. So you're using your template to draw around the template onto your fabric, and then just cut very carefully on the lines exactly. So you have an exact 5.5 by 4 inch rectangle. These rectangles then need to be folded in half. And ironed, and then sewn along the top. Now we're going to cut the other parts of the shield using that template we made earlier. Place that on your fabric and either using a biro or a Sharpie marker pen. Carefully draw a line all the way around your template. It's important, as in every other step, that you're very exact in drawing your line. Otherwise you'll end up with a piece of fabric that's the wrong size. As you can see here, if you're very careful with how you lay them out, you can get quite a lot of shield pieces out of a piece of fabric. Then you need to very carefully cut your shield out, just along the line. So when you've finished cutting 2 of your templates, and a lot of people like to use 2 different fabrics for the one shield to make them more colourful and pretty. So you should have 2 of these. I'm going to use this blue one and this yellow one that I cut earlier for our shield today. So now you should have 2 pieces of cotton cut in the template size and 1 piece of the PUL, the waterproof fabric, cut in the same template size, and your 2 pocket pieces folded and sewn. Now it's very important that you layer these items very carefully so that when you sew the exact 1/4 inch seam, you pick up all 5 layers of fabric, and there is no holes in your seams. So first we start with the PUL. It's a little bit easier to go through the machine if you put the shiny side up. You can see there's a shiny side and a more fabricy side. So start with the shiny side up. Take one of your pieces of cotton fabric and layer that with the good side up, not the wrong side. Be very fussy about lining up all the raw edges as best you can. Then take your pocket pieces. You're lining up the raw edges at the top and at the bottom, making sure that your sewn and folded part is towards the middle of the shield and not towards the edge. Then you take your final piece of fabric and you lay that with the bad side up, not the good side. And again, be very fussy in trying to line up the ends exactly as possible so you will catch all the pieces. Then to hold this all in place before you sew, you need to pin all the way around. Be careful not to move things much as you pin your layers together. If you have access to these clips, which are often sold in quilting stores, this is even faster than pinning, and you can just use the clips to hold the ends together instead of a pin. So now we have the final pinned layered sandwich. We take it to the machine and do some sewing. So we've pinned and layered our shield, and we're going to sew 3 seams. We're going to leave 1 seam open. It's very important at this step that you sew exactly a 1/4 inch seam. I'm using a 1/4 inch foot, so I know if my needle's in the center, this will come out as a 1/4 inch seam. But if you don't have a 1/4 inch foot, it's important that you measure first and work out where your fabric should be in relation to your foot to get an exact 1/4 inch seam. So we'll stop there and we just do a little reversing stitch to make sure it holds. And as you can see, I've left the final side open for the turn. So we've sewn the 3 sides, and the next step is we have to clip the corners, the curves, and so you just want to make little small cuts into that curve and just clip across the corners with a sharp pair of scissors, because this will make it easier when you come to turn. Now we're going to turn it right side out. So just using your thumbs, open it out so the right sides of the fabric are showing and the PUL is now hidden on the inside. Now you can just use your fingers, but if you do a lot of these in one day you'll get sore fingers. So I personally like to use a crochet hook, but you can also use a chopstick if you don't tend to crochet. And what you want to do is just use your instrument to really make sure you've flattened out all the corners. Don't push too hard or you'll push through your seams. However, if you do push through your seams at this point, it gives you an indication that you need to go and re-sew that seam, so some poor girl won't end up with a dodgy product. And that's what it should look like up to this point. The next thing we have to do is finish this pocket seam. Now if you commence to sew it now with the pockets in this position, this pocket will end up on the wrong side. So first you have to make sure that you've got one pocket on this side of the fabric layers and the other pocket on the other side. Now you can sew this seam. So we'll just sew this final seam. Like before, we just give those corners a little clip. And then you can turn that pocket the right way around. And there is our item ready to be ironed. So now we're going to do a top stitch all around the edge of the item, and when we get to the pocket fold you just need to do a little back and forth so you've got reinforced stitching at this point. It's important that you try and keep it as close to the edge as possible so you don't narrow this pocket opening and make it difficult to put the liner in later on. So now we're going to finally put the snaps on the finished item. The snaps need to snap together around the underwear. In order for this to work, they need to be put on opposite ways on each side, and one side needs to be a pin or a sticky out part, and the other side needs to be a socket or the part that accepts the pin. So in order to do this, the snaps have 3 parts, 3 different pieces. One is the shiny button, seen here, and then we have the socket part, and then we have the pin part. Now the other important part about putting snaps on is that you should only see the shiny button on one side of the fabric, and that end, and when you turn it over the other end has the shiny button. If you snap it so there's a shiny button visible on the same side, you will have done it wrong and it won't fit around the underwear. So the snaps machine comes with 2 different heads or parts. One for the socket part and one for the pin part. So if you're doing a large number of them, what you do is snap all the right hand sides with the socket and then come back and snap all the left hand sides with the pin, because you have to change. It's a little bit of a pain to change the heads. So you know which head you've got on because the changeable part, not the shiny button part, will fit snugly onto the head with a clip. So you start off by clipping that on, and you can feel that fits on snugly. And then you take your finished item and about 1/4 inch in and in the centre, so just fold it in half to get the centre, you're going to do the thing. Now it's best to make a small hole with something sharp. I have a special sewing tool, but anything that you can use. And that way when you push your button part in, it'll sort of stay in a little bit while you're adjusting the rest. So you put your button part into the bottom of the machine there and then push the thing on. You need to give it for quite a bit of force at this point, because if you don't give it enough force, the plastic won't mould properly and it won't snap together properly next step. So you can see here that that very centre piece of plastic has been forced flat by the force. If that's not been forced flat, you haven't pressed hard enough. So now we've got a shiny button on this side. It's important that we don't put that like this, that we put the shiny button on this yellow side this time. So again, fold your fabric in half, measure a little bit down from the end, make a little hole, pop your little button in, and then we have to change the headpiece, because it's this second headpiece that will accept the new sort of snap. So we have to take this off, with an Allen key that comes with the cam snap machine, and put the new one in, which is why I was saying it might be simpler to batch them so you don't have to change every time you do one item. But for this today, we'll just show you how to do it. So push that button through, making sure, as I said before, it's not on the same side as it was before. Lay it in there again and press down firmly and pull it off the machine. And again, you can see that it's nice and flat there. So finally, just to make sure we've done it right, try and snap them together, and they should come together with that satisfying click and be slightly difficult to pull apart. And that way, you know you've put your snaps on properly. Thank you for watching our video, and have fun making shields.